Dear audience, welcome to Etteplan's webinar series about cyber security. Today our topic will be self-service solutions, which encompass both digital services and physical devices. And we're going to be discussing self-service solutions and concurrently also related cybersecurity matters. Today we have a studio here to talk and also to answer any questions you might have. I have here on the right side, I have Antti Ojaranta. He's working as business architect in Etteplan's Cloud and Application Business Unit, long experience in self-service solutions and various software solutions. And then as the hacker perspective, we have Donny Werner, who's leading security testing and vulnerability assessment specialist in Etteplan's security testing team. And then we have our Lauri Kuusisto here on the left, who will be following the chat and posing up any of your questions. Lauri is leading the cybersecurity team and software testing team in southern Finland. So if you have any questions, please write in the chat and Lauri will then take those up. Today's agenda, we will have several discussion topics today. We will talk about digital self-services first in general, what they are, and various aspects also related to cybersecurity. Then we will proceed to discussing how attack services related to self-services have developed over time. And then in the end of this discussion, we will go in a little bit into secure development lifecycle and also what's happening on the EU front and also a bit in the US related to the importance of secure development in self-service solutions. But we will have also a series of questions in the webinar. And would you, Oscar, we have also Oscar here in the studio as our technician. So would you, Oscar, please put up the first question? Today, as we're discussing self-service solutions, the first question is that, is your company placing or has it placed a self-service solution on the market? And we have these 4 different alternatives in the questions. A, what is a self-service solution? B, we're not placing any self-service solutions on the market. C, we have already placed or will place a self-service solution on the market before 24. And the D is that we will place a new self-service solution on the market after 24. And we will get back to that year 24 then later on. So please take your time and answer the question. And then we will discuss also the results here at some point. So about the digital self-services at Etteplan, before asking Antti a little bit more questions, you know, I'm working myself in Etteplan sales. I'm focusing on medical devices and cybersecurity, and I've been following with big interest what the Etteplan is doing on the cloud and application side related to self-service solutions. Maybe here, at least on the Finnish market, some of the most known ones are the Neste refueling mobile app, where you can buy gas, you can operate the washing self-service washing station, and in some sites you can also access the self-service kiosk and buy groceries and other stuff. And we have also made self-service solutions for accessing cars without having any keys, and for car sharing pools. And lately also we support the bigger companies in for example, building electric car charging infrastructure with the user interfaces, and help companies in building software platforms for facilitating various tasks related to after sales, like for TANA and such. But Antti, in your own word, what is a self-service solution?
Well, that's a quite self-explaining term. It refers to a service where you operate by yourself. And in our case, it usually means that it can be some sort of human machine interface, or just like a digital interface like a web or mobile app. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a very self-explaining, simple term, but it covers this digital aspect, but also several services that doesn't include any kind of digital touch points.
Yeah. Why are companies investing into self-service? Kind of what are the main business drivers?
Yeah, of course, it depends on the case, but the main thing is that usually companies try to free up some resources or make them focus on the right, correct things that they need to work with, and of course, in some period, it's saving also the money.
And I think it was good that you still opened up the term, because regarding the poll, looking at the poll results, majority of the viewers are asking what is a self-service solution. So we got some votes both of this. We are not gonna place this on the market, or we have or will place before 24. Those got equally as much votes, but majority of the audience is saying that, or asking what is a self-service solution.
Yeah, it might be because in the past, we have used to already to get like served in certain places like a grocery stores and stuff, and nowadays when we have self-service takeouts, for an example, it doesn't feel that we actually use self-service concepts.
Right.
So it's just that it's a little bit changing the mindset.
Right.
Nowadays.
We're so used to maybe
Yeah.
do it that we don't even identify that we are doing the service by ourselves. Yeah.
I remember the first time that I encountered a McDonald's that had the self-service or for buying and ordering the food. I was driving up to Lapland and halfway, was it in Kajaani? I think it was in Kuopio. I was very hungry and stopped and they forced me to use this self-service counter, and it was the first time negative experience, but then they brought me a coffee and it turned positive. But after that, and then also in the grocery stores, the self-service has become more now kind of
it's more attractive.
Yeah, it becomes quite attractive that if you don't want to have personal service.
yeah.
Like many of the Finns, they maybe prefer that machine instead.
I was gonna say, is it more preferable for a Finn that that they got coffee for free?
Yeah.
I think this is the thing.
Good bargain.
But one of the major things was COVID-19. Actually, it's the only positive thing I see in it, that it kind of like brought the self-service concepts in the front end to be visible to end users.
What are, in your experience, the main success factors for really good and successful self-services?
Of course, it must serve the need of the end user, but on the other side, of course, it needs to somehow bring new capabilities or aspects to your business and drive that forward. So I believe those two things are the main things.
I can imagine from a business perspective the ability to when a company is growing, that you are not that dependent on the personal and human resources, but that the service and the volumes and the business can grow without significant investments into service personnel.
Yeah, that have that two different aspects. That of course the resources are the one thing that you can do different things to or serve better the persons that really needs the help, because that was the issue at some point, that usually if you go to electronics store or something like that, there's instantly somebody coming to ask you and giving you a guidance even if you don't need it. So basically they can focus more on the people and the customers that really needs the help.
Yeah, good. Then could you please explain a little bit what is Etteplan's main expertise in this area of digital self-services?
Yeah, basically we as a company can build the concepts, self-service concepts from a scratch, from the idea level to production ready, and it can contain hardware and software, and it can be both separately or combine those. And we have capabilities to example for the hardware, concepts that do different sort of testings that is needed, certifications and stuff. We have a good big test labs where we can example put the devices under some environmental like conditions, like freezing storm or something like that, and test it that it works on that. So we have like a very wide offering, and that's basically why we are like a very good company to provide these services.
Yeah, I remember also that one thing that is special with Etteplan and the self-services, that we have a very high number of, let's say, physical device interfaces in the solutions that we work. And I understand we have in tens or even hundreds of thousands of IoT nodes if you combine total these different self-service solutions where we're responsible of application lifecycle maintenance. So that's just one part. And then of course now we also have nowadays really good capabilities in supporting the cybersecurity of the self-service solutions, the secure development lifecycle, and we have both from the device side and from the web application side. We have a very good both secure architecture and also penetration testing capabilities. I'm really happy that Etteplan's capabilities have developed to this perspective. So if you think about self-service, I have kind of the next question. What do you see that are the major security related issues in different self-service solutions?
Well, I think that surface area is your number one risk. That what is the thing that people can touch, the thing that the people can manipulate. And for example, let's take mobile pay, for example. Everybody can use the app. If there's some flaw inside that app, then you have an exponential number of people that might key something wrong and step into that flaw, or someone who's maybe security researcher, so on and so forth, who's going to play with the app and see if they can manipulate it somehow. Maybe they will try to intercept the communication there, because that's outside of your control. Basically, everything that's outside of your immediate control would be considered a threat or risk. Of course, there's many steps that you would take in the design phase and process to analyze your threat and risk surface, and then to understand how you would design around those scenarios and situations.
So what you're actually explaining is that when you put an application in an app on a mobile phone as a self-service interface, or there's a device at let's say a gas station or something, there will be such a big number of users that they are going to heavily test it and use it in ways that you might not have even planned, and the big number of users will find these if there's any anomalies or bugs.
A usability issue can indeed be a security issue.
Yeah.
Especially, let's say you have some type of form field where you're filling out maybe a quantity, and maybe there wasn't the foresight to look out that instead of putting a quantity 1, somebody put a quantity 0.1, and somehow that was processed. The person is actually then charged 10% of the original cost. The item goes through and ends up being shipped to the customer.
Yeah.
I know this has happened in the past, for example, but this would be one example of that. As far as how many people have access, you could think of things like, a lot of security testing went through with Tesla, for example. They have this screen in the car. Many people can touch that and do things, all these infotainment, so on and so forth. Some of them have their own Wi-Fi broadcast. It's their own Wi-Fi modem, and you could actually, instead of allowing it to do what it naturally does, you could connect to that. And if there's a flaw within that, then you would be able to access maybe something that you weren't supposed to be able to reach into. So you always need to look at this surface attack scenarios. How would somebody attack this? What were the scenarios there? So that's what I look at.
Yeah, so sort of the importance, in addition to software and the product testing, also to look at from like a hacker perspective or a misuse perspective.
Yeah, well, if you live out in the countryside and there's no neighbors for several kilometers, you might not be lock all of your windows at night, for example. Whereas if you live in maybe in the center of the city, you would be a lot more cautious
Yeah.
to lock your doors. Number one, there's more people, right? More things to be touching that thing, and also the likelihood that there would be someone wanting to do something in a negative way just by the number count. Let's say 1 out of 10 people want to do something bad. Out in the countryside, you might only ever see 5 people. That 10th person might not ever show themselves, but then in the city, you're going to have tens and tens and tens of people. So your likelihood of risk rises there. So it just simple scenarios like that we can focus and look at in these things.
Antti, what comes to your mind related to security-related issues in self-service? What comes to, based on your experience?
Yeah, I kind of agree that the most relevant stuff is related to the end user itself, and the many possibilities of mistakes. It can be a technical fault causing some errors or something like that, but also the manual feeds and stuff you can insert in different services. There's a lot of chances for things to go wrong when you do manual operations or activities. And yeah, it depends, of course, also if it's a public service, if it's like a closed service in private space or something like that. And in public, of course, you need to take care that each the user groups are capable of using it, and the issues comes more like severe maybe if you are disabled to use it in some sort of way, and you need to build many different ways of using the service. Example, you can have some sort of vision-based disability or something like that, and how you will use the user interface, and what kind of threats comes when you cannot see. So there can be somebody watching your feed, what you insert in the service behind your back and stuff. So there's a lot of different kind of aspects related to the end user security issues.
Yeah. In the self-service, there's many times there's personal data involved, and there's also monetary transactions. What is done to build user trust? Because of course, a new digital service or self-service, and that you need to use for payments or to provide some privacy information. How do you build trust in this, in a new self-service?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and my personal opinion is that the trust between the service provider and the end user is the most important thing for the the concept to be successful. And everything that doesn't look normal or trustworthy, it will decrease the level, of course. So yeah,
my rule of thumb is if it looks bad, it's bad. that's my typical rule of thumb. And to be honest, you especially as an end user, you know from your feelings whether something seems to be right or not. And I give that advice not only to end users but to developers, especially the developers, that they know best sometimes in a way that if this doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right. That's always trust your instincts, basically. Common sense rules the day in these things. In my opinion, it's taken me this far in my life, and I'm doing pretty good in that regard. But that advice is the best.
But if I name like a few things that I got on my mind is that the concept or the service needs to be understandable, easy to use, good guidance, and of course it needs to be. It cannot be like in MVP level or the prototype of something. You need to polish it at least in the decent level. So each time you see something weird or error screen coming out, it doesn't mean that it's meant to be in production.
Yeah, how was I going to say? If you think it might be able to happen, it will happen. It's even more than Murphy's Law, for example, that if you think that it could happen, it will. Somebody somewhere will do it, and it will happen. So always design and forward think from that point of view. Basically, that's how I view things. But my view is very unique, though.
But like you said, there is a massive amount of users nowadays. So if the probability is 0.000 whatever, it will still most likely happen.
Yes, it will happen.
That's the statistics.
Yes, statistics of now in the farmhouse scenario that I mentioned earlier. Maybe it was even your grandparents' farm, and nothing ever happened. You know, there. Well, maybe the population has grown. You have people moving even closer, so there is that small chance still that it rises. Myself, I grew up as well without locks on my door. Even depending on where I'm at, I may not lock my car door even, for example, you know, but that's my gauging of the trust. Not that I'm testing anybody to see what will happen, but and if something bad happens, at least I know whose fault that is. That's my fault. It's not the guy who took my sunglasses from my car because I left it open. I should have taken my precaution.
Very good. Hey, thank you so much. We're going to be moving forward in this webinar to talking about how attack surfaces in self-services have been evolving over time, over the decades, and moving from the front end maybe a bit to the back end. And before that, we have the next question to the audience. In US, the Biden administration launched an executive order in May 21 for improving nation's cybersecurity, and for the federal government and maybe also for some critical infrastructure operators, they very strongly endorse cloud migration from these on-premise servers to migration to cloud. Now we're going to ask first the audience, and we're going to discuss a little bit that to what extent do you think cloud migration solves your security issues? And the first selection is completely, mostly, to some degree, not at all, or I don't know. So please give your answers, and we're looking forward to hearing what the audience thinks. And now let's see whom I'm gonna select first. Maybe let's let let's talk with the designer.
Talk to the good guy back there.
Let's start with the good guy. So
Okay.
What are the benefits from a security person? Why is cloud migration endorsed strongly in the industry, so to say?
I need to answer. Start from the just the development point of view. Of course, it will simplify things in some way in some cases, but and of course the pre-built functionalities that you have in the cloud platform, it will somehow be easier to use, and it's like gathering all the required things together. So it will, in the end, mostly save time, and in some cases save the money also compared to like a private cloud. And yeah, that's the main benefits I have in my mind.
So sort of there's ready assets, you get faster going, and scalability of resources.
Yeah, and if you are starting to build like a new concept and starting with MVP, which is not going live, you can you can start even with a free, like a cost free, that you can start building it, and then when you move on and scale it, it's from a scaling point of view, it's easier, but also you can follow all the time the costs, that how those increase and develop. So it's manageable.
Yeah. Then asking Donny, of course, there are certain security risks that perhaps need more attention when moving from on-premises to cloud. How would you like to kind of comment cloud migration solving security issues?
Well, I think it depends greatly on the type of data that you want to quote migrate to the cloud. I think that statistical data, for example, things that have a very non-personal nature, especially when you have lots of machine-to-machine connections and things of this, which we're having these days, then the cloud is likely a really great idea. I think scalability is absolutely a critical thing in cloud. I think it becomes a little bit tougher when you get into more highly personal information with regards to your clients. Now these days we have to also think about GDPR. Where is that cloud at? Is it in the is it there? The other thing is that you're trusting your data to somebody else. You're actually allowing it outside of the kind of inside your home, so to speak, that you're kind of putting it out there in a way. In some ways, it can be more secure that your data is in the cloud. However, I think anybody could simply Google, like, for example, Azure or AWS Web Service hack, data leak, so on and so forth, so that if there is a breach, it's likely going to be a lot more heavy and a lot more devastating. The ease of access may be something that you did not anticipate, that there's a configuration issue with the cloud service administration, for example, or some other thing that is really in a way almost beyond your control. Whereas if you do host it internally, your own self, of course, data cost is a big issue. Maintenance and the hardware cost is usually the factor to move, but you're able to kind of hold on to that data maybe a little bit tighter in some cases. I think it depends. It's a case by case thing. I don't personally believe in this mass migration to cloud. Remember, it's just somebody else's computer. This is what always kind of keeps me going on that. In my course of history in cybersecurity, I have been able to breach systems because they were hosted on a cloud, and that there was an introduced vulnerability that was actually accidental, but it was introduced outside developers' hands, basically. That there was a flaw on the hosting side and the cloud side that allowed a breach into the company from another point of view. So it's a, what do we say here? 50-60?
Yeah, 50.
It's a 50-60 on that for sure.
What's your thinking about? Let's go to the results soon. Just one question. There's these basic, let's say, security requirements like encryption and maintaining the integrity of the data and authentication, access control that are. So how much do these then help in securing the data?
Absolutely, they're going to help. Absolutely, the more of these types of things that are solid concepts that don't hinder the end user or make it more difficult for that end user. Encryption, of course, should be latest technologies, because when SHA used to be very secure, now we can brute force those very quickly because of technology. So it all depends on the emerging technologies, so on and so forth, how robust that will be.
Okay. Hey, yes, Lauri, how does the results look like?
And before that, I want to remind that we have this questions panel here as well. So if you have any comments or questions, actually we only see them, so you can trust on us. And if the voice is bad or anything else, you can comment that as well. But yeah, regarding the question, so interesting fact is that nobody thinks it will completely solve your security issues.
No.
Small portion, 7% said it's mostly. Roughly 30% said is saying to some degree it will solve. Again, a small portion saying it will solve, won't solve at all, and then over half are saying I don't know.
Okay, so then it's a good discussion topic.
I think that's a pretty good mix. And I think people are being very realistic, actually.
Yeah. So nobody definitely thinks it's going to completely solve
everything. That's great.
So it's scattered answer from the audience.
Well, it's a scattered answer from me too, I guess.
That's true.
What I was saying.
Did you have something else to add to this cloud migration?
Maybe that it's the security not come. Yeah, first of all, I agree with the audience, and the security doesn't come along with the cloud platform. You know, we had last year we had a good example when in Java-based project that use log4j. There was a huge vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
And basically it opened up all the services. But of course, the platforms reacted very nicely. They built the tools that provided you the information that we found that your service is using this component, third-party component, and they gave you the instructions how to move on and fix it. But of course, my point was that the cloud isn't bringing the security. So you need to, of course, take consideration what kind of components and plugins and third-party components you use while you develop things.
That's a very important fact actually in secure development, that you have this traceability of third-party software components, and in devices also the importance of tracing the third-party hardware components vulnerability is also something that is probably going to be increasing, really a fundamental thing nowadays for developers.
Software bill of material.
Right? Yes, software bill of materials.
Absolutely. No, match those, cost reference those with what has been the vulnerability history or report history of those particular bills of materials, whether those are libraries, for example, or whatever have you, that or some service or whatever, that the version be known that you're currently using deployed. What has been the history on that? Is there not, if it's had bad history, what is the alternative? Can we use an alternative, for example? Would be a great decision making process there as well. So yeah, there's lots of considerations, absolutely.
Now then, thank you very much to the panelists and also to the audience for this discussion about cloud migration. We were before this webinar discussing a bit how attack surfaces have changed over time, and we also consider typically the self-service solutions. There's plenty of valuables. There's money, there's data, of course. There's the possibility of harming a company's reputation, or even causing physical harm to people and property and such. And so to say, we kind of, when we look at back in the days, this concept about fraud and getting to somebody's money has been around for as long as humankind, and we sort of if you go back 10, 20 years, what were the kind of the main hacks for getting access to somebody's money, you know, or getting something for free?
Generally, I think back before the proliferation, especially for, let's say, what we were talking earlier about the number of users, right? Yeah. So people at home. Okay. Back in, let's say, 20 years ago, maybe you didn't necessarily have a broadband router at your home, and you were literally connected to the internet. With a broadband router, you're protected in a large factor because of the fact that you subnetted off of that, and you're not, your computer is not actually connected directly to the internet. Your router kind of provides that. It's not really a firewall, but it is. And in that way, previously you could just attack your computer directly and get your personal information from your computer directly. Whereas now you would have to, let's say, you know, hack an institution where the security is going to be a lot more stringent and so on and so forth, depending on the level of the attacker, whether they be your general Mr. you know, John Smith criminal or a state level person. You know, as a lower kind of guy, you might try to use some technology or see if you can hack some router or something into the bank or something. Whereas if you're, let's say, nation state level, it's better to just get somebody hired into the company to get an insider point of view or an attack. So I think in a lot of ways technology has raised the bar quite a bit. It's number one, it's given protection to the end user to a large degree, but also it has opened up avenues for the attacker as well. So that's my point of view.
What's your view on these?
Yeah, you mentioned money, and how I see it is that money is quite in the center of the idea of making scams, and the target is always to get the best possible benefit from the scam and the fraud. And
we call that a price performance trade-off.
yeah, yeah. Basically, if we a little bit go to one of my expertise areas, payments, and if we look from that point of view, that first we have like checkbooks and the cash and so on. That was just quite easy to, if you know still the identity, you can make a scams, and money was copied and stuff. But of course, the payment industry took needed actions, and nowadays there's like a different standards and techniques that is like a industry best practices, and it brings the security, but the evolution, and I would call it even in revolution, but it has brought us a different kind of security mechanisms, and it has changed the way the scams and the frauds are done. Basically, first it was focusing on scheming the magnetic stripe credit cards and stuff, and video taping the entry of PIN codes and stuff, which was pretty easy. Everybody can do it with the device of costing like a few €100. It was easy, but nowadays we have a chip cards and the techniques like a 3-domain security behind the payments, that it's not anymore so focused on the payment like the instruments. So the scams are now done through the end user itself. So you get approached from the approached by email that you have some bank matter that you need to handle. Give me this information and that information, and they are quite clever sometimes. And yeah, it has changed the way the security in the payments at least needs to be considered.
That's a social engineering aspect.
Yeah.
And
And from self-service point of view, we have for an example, we have a long experience of providing different services to petrol stations and the oil and gas industry, and there now we utilize, at least in Finland and most of the European countries, we utilize these like self-service terminals where you make the payments, and there's no service anymore to somebody to come and pick the pistol and fuel your car. You need to do that whole thing by yourself. So
the Shell station, you can still get
yeah,
the Shell stations.
Yeah, but it has changed that it's moving to be more. The focus has been moved more to be in the end user actions.
Yeah. So basically, when somebody when there's a malicious third party wants to get access of money or data or something else, this kind of social engineering is one important way that is needed. We also discussed earlier about this. So we also, I understood that in addition to this social engineering, maybe this kind of now in the time of freedom and security, that the attack surface needs to be much more also in the back end and require maybe physical access also to back end and involving maybe insiders.
In some cases, this is true. I would say, we were talking about cloud services earlier, that would probably be less likely to happen, but again, it depends on the level of the attacker. Of course, nation state level, then your threats come from all areas, particularly the insider. So I think it depends on what is the nature of it, how hard is it, how valuable is it. I may not attack something because the bang for the buck, so to speak, isn't there, or the price or time performance trade-off is not worth it. It's not worth it for me to brute force a 10-character PIN for example, it is valuable for me to try to hack a 4-digit PIN. I can do a 4-digit PIN by hand over the course of a couple of days, casually, 000000001. PIN grows larger, then why am I going to try it? The likelihood of me getting a correct PIN has now grown almost to an infinite number of degree. And if I have 100 monkeys punching, I'm still not going to ever likely reach the code, for example. So complexity plays a big part. These different types of checks where one check has to pass, the other check has to pass the other check, that you're not able to circumvent something in that area, for example.
Yeah,
so.
like that 3-domain security you mentioned. So what did that mean?
It actually means, if I simplify it a little bit, it means that the payment actions, the digital payment action is secured in 3 different domains. So 3 different systems handle the payment transaction and the authorization of it. So if you manage to find out something from one domain, one system, you cannot use that information. But the thing that why I picked it up, the money thing, that back to the table, is that the money is like I said, it's a very center in the scams nowadays. But you cannot pick or make the scam like you said, Tony, that it usually requires some kind of internal information, leaked information, or something like that to make it happen nowadays. So the risk is not in that case just in the front end and in the end user, but you need to take care of all those. If you are, example, in cloud, we nowadays have banks and payment processors and stuff which are like fully cloud native. So you need to take care of the access management. The leak can come from your employee PC or something like that. So you need to take into consideration the whole system and all the touch points.
Yeah. So that gives a very nice kind of introduction then to information security management system, overall management of the security for IT. We could move then forward to our last section. We're going to be talking about a little bit about secure development lifecycle and security regulations, which are one of my favorite topics. So we have the third question for
your favorite topics.
Yes. But I think that many people will find these ongoing changes also favorable. So we would like to ask the audience, how far are you in practicing secure development lifecycle or secure product development lifecycle? So the first question answer is, what is SDL or SPDL? The second one is, I know what SDL is, but I have not yet used it. Then third answer is, I've used SDL already to some extent. The fourth answer is formally defined as part of product software development in our quality management system. Or the fifth answer is that products and applications developed according to SDL have already been launched. And we're eagerly waiting to hear what the situation is in the audience. And this is such a hot topic. While waiting, what is this secure development life cycle? So very brief summary from the Federal Drugs Administration related to medical devices, that they want to see that when you make medical software or medical device, that there's a threat model that is very well justified, and you've identified what kind of data is moving and what kind of actors are, and what are actually the privacy and safety risks that are involved in this setting, and then that you kind of in your risk analysis you identify what are the likelihoods and the impacts of the safety and privacy risks related to security, and you decide what what threats you're going to mitigate by design, and then you specify security requirements, you implement design, you instruct the people how to harden the platform, and then as you need to also verify that your solution meets then the requirements that you have set, and that you have planned for it, and then you have a penetration testing team, and partly is also done by design, but you verify that you meet the security requirements and there's robustness and you have traceability. So there's one view of what is a secure development lifecycle. Any answers from the audience so far?
Yes, so scattered results, but 1/3 is asking what is SDL.
Yes.
So luckily you are here to explain that.
Yeah.
A bit over half is saying that not yet started. So they seem to know what's going on, but not yet implemented. And then a little bit more than 10% saying that first part's in use to some extent. But nobody has fully implemented and released products.
Yeah. About the history of SDL, do you, by the way, Donny, remember how the secure development lifecycle frameworks came to be? Myself, I remember that Microsoft SDL was one of the early ones.
Microsoft is one of the early ones to kind of put it into kind of an open framework, so to speak. And I think that they've actually done a good job. It could have been any company, but I think the outline there is really good. That through the simple process, you're actually able to extrapolate and build on top of it, going through this development life cycle. I do think the most important aspect of it is, number one, you mentioned this threat and risk modeling and scenarios. This is absolutely true, and you should have somebody with an unbiased point of view, with not being connected to your development team, to be able to look at it from a different point of view. Because I can tell you absolutely, if you have a product and you feel that your team has done a good job of identifying threats and risks, I can almost guarantee I will find one that you have never thought about, and then you will go, you will face palm, absolutely. But to understand your threat and risk, and then to really logically design with those threats and risks in mind, how through development process can we minimize those. We spoke earlier about this kind of bill of materials, knowing what your risk on that. That's always that's a good place to start. You might find that in your coding itself, perhaps you're not using proper secure statements, maybe for an SQL backend. Instead of having your general open SQL query, you'll have a predefined query, so on and so forth. So you want to be able to extrapolate these, and what can we do? How can we do this here? Especially again in coding, in the old C, we had, for example, F print. And now, anybody who's familiar with the language, you don't use that statement. You use an SF print, because the F print has been depreciated. We know that there's risks involved with that. So making sure that everybody who is conversant in the language, the framework that they've been hired to produce or work within for your group or whatever, should be not only versed on how to make hello world, but how to make the hello world in a secure fashion as well. This is very, very important in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even touched the question.
Yeah, you touched it perfectly, because you already mentioned kind of my next question. So one of the important things when you want to get introduced with secure development is actually that threat modeling, and that's also the first time when the developers might. Somebody might bring in the hacker to give an outsider view.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that directly, actually, because that just directly came to my mind. One of the best ways to start an SDL project is to first have a security evaluation done, whether that be a penetration test, vulnerability assessment, security verification, whatever have you, but to have that unbiased party come and look at your product and give their professional opinion about what they see, what they've been able to do, what they haven't been able to do. What are you doing right? What are you doing that might be able to be strengthened, that would lessen the flaw, or that you can mitigate this action that can be taken by a hacker. You know, I mean, it could be anything as simple as showing who your development team is on your web page, and that all the email addresses for your development team are there. Hey, you know, welcome to our team. From an attacker point of view, now I'm going to send emails to all those people with some social engineering that we mentioned earlier, so on and so forth. So it all stems from this kind of common sense, taking a look at things from this kind of nefarious point of view as well. You might not know how to break into your car, but I probably do. I can smash the window, of course. You know, so all these, be careful on your farm in countries.
Good. Hey, related to this SDL, I have a bit of regulatory news now.
Oh boy.
And I'm going to ask about your comments. So the first one is, people might have heard about Network and Information Security Directive that came into force in 2016, and it's now being revised. And it's, you know, the thing, there's something called critical infrastructure, like electricity providers and such. And now the scope of critical infrastructure is being massively enlarged. So, for example, all manufacturers of electrical equipment are going to be like important entities, and the national authorities will inspect if when something happens, that these companies have in place appropriate technical and organizational measures in network and information systems, acquisition, development, and maintenance. So basically, that they have their cybersecurity management system and secure development process in shape. Also, then there are, of course, these essential entities that were earlier the critical infrastructure. So those are monitored proactively by these governmental authorities. In Finland, we have Traficom for medical devices, Valvira and such. But this is coming, and you can find on the internet news that we can expect that the EU will publish this NIS2 in the official journal of EU, and then there's going to be 21 months of time for the member states to implement this regulation into national legislation. And basically, there's a big chance that in EU, for example in Finland, all companies that are essentially important entities need to place security requirements when they purchase and develop and maintain software or network in information system. That's like more than one device that communicates, or software one device that communicates somewhere. So something to look forward to. And of course, it's a nice thing. There's a bit of edits that have been going on. They have also added that managed security services providers are becoming essential entities that need to, of course, disclose if somebody's taking care of your security. They need to disclose if there's any vulnerabilities of hacks that they have been.
The likelihood of that is probably kind of low, because that puts them on the hook.
Yeah, let's see what happens. But that was a very late
that's shocking
addition. So what do you think about that? That this is pretty much a horizontal regulation in EU about you have to take.
But why hasn't it been going on already? Why hasn't it been a concern already? Why does it take some deadline to raise the importance of this? Is what I fail to understand.
In EU, in the last decade, actually, the legislation did not that much take into consideration the risk of connectivity, artificial intelligence, robotics, and this 2016 legislation was a big jump already, that there were certain companies that were essential for the function of the society. And now they are significantly increasing it, but it just takes time, I think. But
it's a tough topic, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that's a tough topic.
Define.
Yeah. Of course, I could be very negative in regards to this, because I can think of all kinds of bad things. Why wasn't this thought of?
Yeah.
This should, even before this, even cyber stuff, that general physical security type of things are thought of and planned out, and that you make common sense choices again on this, like whether you're on a farmhouse or you live in the city, whatever the situation is how much protection do you provide from the outside public, just who can come in and come out, so on and so forth. So a lot of these things, in my opinion, they should have been done already. We hope that there's no one running around with the heads cut off, that the sky is falling and they don't know what to do, that this should have absolutely been thought of.
Better late than
never. It is better late than never. I think it's good for a country to I don't know about mandate, but at least test and understand their critical infrastructure's exposure what's the risks there, what's currently going on, so on and so forth. I have personally been involved in doing a pre-test against the system because a country was going to be doing a national security audit against critical infrastructure, banks, online banks, and telco, so on and so forth. So I think that the need is there, that if you're providing these types of things, you need to be up on your security directly, that it's nobody's fault but your own if you're not.
Good. Time is flying when we have fun. I'm going to take one last point here. Also the safety regulations in Europe are renewing, and maybe the most interesting thing is that the radio equipment delegated acts will enter into force 1st of August 24, which means that all existing IoT products in EU that are sold might lose their CE declaration conformity, and their sales might become illegal. And I'm just going to read here one of the security requirements here. And radio equipment does not harm the network or its functioning or misuse network resources, thereby causing an unacceptable degradation of service. So basically all products that are in the future sold in EU or are gonna stay on the market need to have some kind of appropriate protection from hijacking to DOSing attacks.
Yeah.
Now, how do you hack products to use in degradation service attacks?
Well, number one, the description of that particular thing is overly broad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think again to protect yourself, that to have experts such as myself, cybersecurity teams to evaluate your product from an agnostic, unbiased point of view. They have nothing to gain but to find a problem, because if you don't find a problem, then the customer will say, oh, maybe you're no good at what you do. But when you do find the problem, then you're able to highlight it. You're showing the value, not only of the service that you provided, but now you feel more secure about your offering to the general public, that your company's name hopefully will remain in good standing, that something bad, they don't get hacked and then the public name say, oh, you guys are insecure, so don't use this business, so on and so forth. So this is what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Lauri, any questions from the audience so far?
Not right now.
Not right now.
We must have
I think we're running out of time as well.
We're running out of time,
we can
so
answer those that come in individually.
Very good. Hey, in that case, I want to thank all the panel, Antti, thank you, Andoni and Lauri, thank you, Oskari behind the camera, thank you, audience, for participating in this webinar. And also, if you have any specific topics that you would like Etteplan to have as a webinar, please give us feedback. So we'll hopefully soon look forward to inviting you to our next webinar about cybersecurity. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.